righty. Let me tweet out some stuff. Cool. Our audio's working. I know it's been a while since I've done this. It has been a monstrous couple weeks, folks, for your boy. Welcome to Missouri Tigers Live. This is episode 15. We are back after a couple week hiatus. God, my hair sucks right now. Not one I wanted to take, but when your laptop breaks and then your phone breaks and then and you just can't organize with Mark to get yourself logged into the system, and because your phone breaks, it has just been a disastrous couple weeks for me. But we're here for Missouri Tigers Live. Welcome back. Welcome to March. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. It's the best time of the year if you're a college basketball fan. The tournament starts in less than 24 hours with the first four, as I'm sure you all are. Wow, my camera's getting a little. As I'm sure a lot of you are very excited for that. No, and I know it's hazy because I can't turn that window off, unfortunately. And I need to connect my camera still to this one, but whatever. I'm still setting up this computer. But we're here to talk about the Missouri Tiger football team and what can expect in 2025. We are getting so close to I'll cut it with you people. The nice people who watch this channel. When the college football season's over, because I do this, I do my writing, I do a ton of stuff, I follow everything. You know how much I pride myself in being able to follow everything. I do get a little tired by the end of it. By the time the national championships played, I am college footballed out. I don't want to care. You have the portal, and I'm still intrigued by the portal, but when that's all closed, we get to January, towards the end of January, I get college football out. I'm just, okay, I'm done. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to think about it anymore. I'm not watching highlights on YouTube. I'm taking a breather. All through February, college basketball is great. If you like hockey, hockey's amazing. The NBA is the NBA. I know a lot of people love the NBA. I like the NBA. What am I talking about? The NFL playoffs are going on. But after that, I'm ready to just breathe for a little while. But we're getting close to that time where I'm starting to get a little the Dave Chappelle, you guys get any of that college football, It usually really hits in April as we transition into May, especially when hockey playoffs and NBA playoffs, and it's not happening every single day, multiple games, and I need 3 TVs to keep up with everything. But there is a couple things to talk about with Mizzou football. The main one being is Eli has talked about as we get into spring ball. Apparently, we do have a QB battle. Now, I'm not. Wow, I can't type, and I typed that hours ago. Now, I'm not surprised by that because you don't want Sam Horn to transfer. If you think he has any talent and you need depth, we saw this last year. Now you have some depth. You have Bo, you have Sam, Drew Pine is still there. You have the freshman there that you have Zollers, who a lot of people are high on, but now he's the 4th string, and there's no pressure. Hey man, unless things go disastrously wrong, there is no pressure that he is going to play, which is good because he's not ready. He's coming off the pretty severe ankle injury. Wow, what is happening? I cannot type today. I was having issues with email earlier. Whew. But they do have a QB battle, which it's fine. If I still think it's going to be Bo. Like, I still think Bo's going to win the QB battle. I still think it's going to be him starting in week 1, probably on a Thursday night. And he's going to lead the Tigers against the Jayhawks in week 2. But I wouldn't be shocked if Horn gets a lot of snaps in that game opening night. And they're going to see what he has. I wouldn't be stunned. Sam Horn has a lot of talent, guys. Like, he was one of Eli's first big recruits, and he's still the first, and really only until Zollers, big QB commit. 4-star out of Georgia, top 150 prospect, top 100 on some sites. Like, he's a talented kid, and someone's laughing outside my apartment. Hope they're having a good time on this St. Patrick's Day. Stay safe. Drink responsibly. Use an Uber. Is that all the PSA messages I think I have to get up? But the thing is, it's gonna be Bo. Like, you see him in these videos, and again, Mizzou football is not releasing a lot. They're not they're not gonna run a spring game, for God's sakes. They're not gonna release anything. Bo Pribula is gonna be the leader of this team, and they'll go as far as he can take them. I do think there is a chance that we get better QB play this year from the Missouri Tigers than we did last year. Brady Cook had a really nice combine, and I'm really happy for Brady, and he's an awesome guy, and you can't question the kid's toughness. Things that I had to say a million times last year, and I understand that people get tired of it. But he wasn't very good last year. Like, he just wasn't. He was closer to 2022 Brady Cook than 2026, which is fine. Or 2023. God, I was just reading. I just had something pulled up about 2026 because that's when the recruiting cycle we're starting to really get into, which is fine. But he was not good enough to lead Missouri where they wanted to go. And it showed even in early season games. He was fighting against Buffalo. Buffalo played a game where they played back. Like, Theo Weiss had like 18 catches for 1 million yards that game because they weren't defending it. Like, they were just letting everything short. We're not going to get beat up top. We're going to run the clock, and we're going to get out of here without getting our tails completely kicked, which is fine. But against Boston College, he struggled. Against Vanderbilt, he really struggled. They made enough plays to win games, but I think there's a chance this year the QB play is better. Now, they don't have the receivers they did last year. As of March 17th, 2025, they don't have a first-round pick. They don't have a mid-round pick. We'll just see what happens. But there is going to be a QB battle between Sam Horn and Brady, or not Brady Cook, good Lord, and Bo. I think it's going to be Bo. They look like it's a team that's going to have to run the ball, and I'm really nervous about this O-line. I don't think this O-line looks to be very good. So we'll see what they do there. But we'll move on into recruiting because, and I have this pulled up from Power Mizzou, because I'm not a recruiting guy. I don't have a ton of connections, so I read just like the rest of you. But Gavin Sidwar, the number 22 quarterback for the 26th class, is going to visit Missouri. He's from Pennsylvania. He's going to visit Ole Miss as well. The thing with the 26 QB is I think it's going to be a difficult spot to recruit. Gary Pinkel always had the philosophy, you want to recruit every class because you got to build out your roster. I think the tough thing Mizzou's going to have with the 2026 recruiting class for quarterback, at the very least, is it's no secret how high this staff is on Zollers. It's not a secret. They think he's the future. They think as soon as maybe next year, he could be the guy moving forward for this Mizzou program and be the guy that takes Mizzou from a pretty good college football program. And look, they've won 21 games in the last 2 years. And if they win 8 games this year, even with a bowl, so let's say they go 8-5 this year, that's still a record over 2 years of 11-2, 10-3, so 21-5 and 29-10. Like, that's a pretty good record. if you're not in a cream of the crop blue blood program in the sport. If they can do that, they think Zollers can be the guy that takes them from pretty good to like a playoff team. I'm not gonna argue against it. I think they're really, really good. I think this is a team that could really surprise some people this year. I think this, like I've said 100 times, if you've been watching the show, there's no excuse for this defense to be bad or not great. Like even mediocre defense. And last year, I think the defense was pretty good. Like I think it was okay. I think in games where they were not playing teams with good QB play, which was most of the teams on their schedule, like let's just call a spade a spade. I mean, who was the best quarterback they played? Milroe. Even Connor Wegman torched them, and Connor Wegman's not even at Texas A&M this year. Milroe torched them. They did a decent job for a half on Milroe. Pavia, was he I think they did an okay job against Diego Pavia, to be perfectly honest. Castellanos got benched. Jackson Arnold is awful. Peyton Thorne, not very good. They just didn't really. Taylon Green's not awful. Is he a top 4 or 5 quarterback they played last year? He might be because he wasn't benched and he isn't awful. Lenora Sellers was pretty good. He's probably the best one, and I don't know. It's going to be. There's no excuse for this defense to be bad, and recruiting wise, they've done a good job. I think this team can really surprise some people, but that's the case. Tying it back to recruiting, I think, especially at the quarterback position, if they're telling everybody how good Matt Zollers is, recruits are going to see that, and they're going to know, hey, there might not be a chance I start here. So it's just going to be very, very difficult. So my next thing I wanted to get into, because with basketball coming around and when Mizzou entered the SEC, people thought they'd be competitive in football, but kind of an afterthought, kind of generally actually what they've been, to be honest. They've had some great years. 2013, 2014, they were really good. 2023, they were damn good. Last year, they might have gotten some breaks because of the schedule. But I'm thinking 2018, 2017, 2022, 2020, competitive, but not really a threat to do anything. And for the most part, they've been right. I don't think anybody thought they'd be god awful like they were in 2016, 2015, 2021, 2012. For the most part. But I think when Mizzou entered the SEC, I think the general consensus has been generally the right. Now, they've had years where they've been better than I think anybody thought. And unlike Texas A&M, who hasn't won an SEC Division Championship, has only won 10 games, twice? COVID, I'll count them for COVID because they would have won 10 games that year. That was a really good team. Let me think. 2012, obviously. They didn't. 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Once or twice they've won 10 games. And Mizzou's done it 13, 14, 4 times. Whatever. But the thought was, basketball, Mizzou would be because when the Mizzou joined the SEC for basketball, and this I'm talking about this in an athletic department way, but when Mizzou joined the SEC for basketball, people thought they were going to be the 3rd or 4th program. It was going to be obviously Kentucky, Florida, and then at the time when Mizzou joined, Arkansas cared. They weren't very good. They had Mike Anderson, who had left Mizzou, Suitcase Mike. Mizzou fans still hold some resentment to him for that. But Arkansas was his dream job. Nolan Richardson was basically a father figure to him. Whatever. Vanderbilt was pretty decent sometimes. Tennessee tried. Other than that, the Mississippi schools didn't try. The Alabama schools didn't try. Georgia didn't try. A&M didn't really care about basketball. South Carolina I know South Carolina cares. I'm not sure Georgia cares, but the thought was Mizzou was going to be the 3rd or 4th program in basketball because Mizzou the last half decade lead up to that had been to an Elite Eight, had been a top 3 seed twice, had been to the tournament every single year, and then Mizzou basketball was a disaster. They made the worst hire in college basketball history. and Kim Anderson, and the tanked the program, and the program is still feeling the effects of it from a national perspective. Now, Dennis Gates has done an unbelievable job. We'll see what they do in the tournament this year. In softball, Mizzou's kind of been what Mizzou's been. Like, they're in that second tier of teams. The SEC is so good at softball, and adding Texas and Oklahoma just made it so much better. But Mizzou's a really good softball program. They're a game away from the College World Series. I was at that game against Duke. They're a really competitive softball program, a nationally competitive softball program. And baseball, disastrous. They should probably cut the program, to be honest. Like, they're just disastrous. I mean, their baseball stadium, I don't know if any of you guys follow. Like, their baseball, if you look around the SEC, in the SEC baseball, like all the SEC baseball stadiums are like, think of them as like major league stadiums. You know, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, LSU, Florida, like these great programs, Arkansas, you know, they have like, think of them as like the equivalent of like major league stadiums. So think of like, you know, you're an MLB player playing for like the Cardinals, you know, you go to Wrigley and like that's Arkansas. You go to wherever, like you play in these amazing stadiums. And then you go to Mizzou, and Mizzou's is like the Tampa Bay Rays stadium. Like, it just sucks. Like, it's just not even competitive. It's not like an awful stadium, like, but it sucks compared to everything else. Like, they don't recruit, they don't put any money into it. They just don't care about baseball. Like, they don't care. They've made that pretty clear. They do not care about baseball. They care about softball, which is good. They care about football, as they should. Every athletic program should care about football, unless it's like in a weird situation. Maybe like a Kansas, Duke, but even like UNC, which arguably Kentucky, you know, cares about basketball now. Like Kentucky's might let go of the best coach they've ever had since Bear Bryant, you know, because he's not winning enough, which is crazy. Not that they're going to do it, but just crazy like that. That's a thing. Like, you are not winning enough for the University of Kentucky, even though you've been really, really good. You've won 10 games here before, which, and they care about men's basketball. They when they hired Dennis, they really did make a step forward in NIL and coaching salaries and all the things that really do matter when it comes to basketball. Women's basketball, they don't care. They've made that clear. They don't care. And the SEC is a really good women's college basketball conference. South Carolina is the best program in the sport right now. Tennessee's been really competitive for stretches, you know, under Pat Summitt. And I know they weren't great under their previous coach, whose name I forget. But this new coach they hired has had a nice couple years. Kentucky's been pretty good. Like, it's a pretty good women's college basketball conference. And Mizzou they don't care. Like, outside of the years where they had Sophie Cunningham, like, they haven't been competitive since joining the SEC. So all that to say, like, where does Mizzou stand in the SEC, athletic department wise? Because really right now they're banking on 3 sports. They're banking, and I like to troll guys. If you're an SEC fan watching this, if you're a fan from Ole Miss, Mississippi State, you don't care about wrestling. Mizzou's really good at wrestling. You do not care. Great. So I'm not including like gymnastics, which I know a lot of SECs, including Mizzou, very good at. I'm not thinking of track and field if you're an Arkansas fan. Like, I'm just thinking of baseball, softball, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, like the 5 big sports at most NCAA institutions. If you're like Iowa State, you don't have baseball. Like, where does Mizzou stand in the SEC, you know, compared to their peers? Because there's a lot of reports coming out, like Mizzou's towards the bottom in funding, and they are. Like, Mizzou will always have to punch above their pay grade to be a nationally competitive program overall. Like, they're never going to win a what's the cup that like Texas and Stanford, Directors Cup? Is that what it is? Like, Texas and Stanford win it every year because they're great at everything. Like, Stanford's like weirdly awful at like basketball and football and amazing at everything else. Like equestrian, it's like, man, go Cardinal. But joking aside, like, Mizzou's has to like kind of pick and choose their spots on where they're going to be good. And they've chosen men's basketball. They've chosen football, which I know a lot of programs do. Like, South Carolina seems to have picked women's basketball, which they should. Like, Dawn Staley's like maybe the best coach in the sport right now. All due respect to Gino Auriemma, but like, looks kind of like time's passed him by a little bit. and football, because Shane did an unbelievable job for them last year. We'll see how they do with like real expectations coming into 2025, which they do. They're going to have some big time expectations. But football, just thinking of football, I'm like, okay, so where does Mizzou stand? So obviously Mizzou is going to be behind your big dogs. Georgia, Bama, Tennessee, LSU, Florida, Auburn, Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, like just in terms of funding and spending, where are they going to be? So that's at least 10 teams. And then you get into a range of like Ole Miss, who is probably above them. So that. Now you're at 10 teams. You were 10th now. So they're in that category with like South Carolina, Mississippi State, Florida is above them. I think I mentioned Florida. So it's like Mizzou, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. You're above Vanderbilt, obviously. Like Vanderbilt's the worst in the conference. God bless Clark Lee for getting them into a bowl game. You're above Mississippi State. I'm pretty confident in that for football. So that puts you into between 11th and 14th. You're probably behind South Carolina. And I think you're ahead of Arkansas, and Kentucky. So, like, you're sitting 11th to 12th in the conference in terms of funding, spending, everything that you have. You're in the bottom half, and you just are always going to be. You're never going – like, Mizzou's never going to outspend and outperform facilities, fan base, tradition, all that stuff. Any of the schools I said above them. Maybe Ole Miss at some point. But Bama, Georgia, Auburn, Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, you're just not going to. So you have to punch above your pay grade. And like things like last year, this is why part of me was so disappointed last year. Like you had an opportunity to make a statement and announce yourself into the national scene and make a playoff. And you just didn't do it. You really struggled and you did not play like a fun brand of football. You were pretty mediocre. And things like that, when you have a schedule like that, you have to take advantage. So Mizzou in the SEC, like they're 11th or 12th. We'll see what happens as time goes on. Look, not to be a downer, because this is one of my biggest problems with college football right now is everything is about the national championship. Any of those teams I just mentioned, South Carolina, Arkansas, Mississippi State, maybe Ole Miss, maybe. Kentucky, Vanderbilt, like these schools, you're never going to win a national championship. You just aren't. Now, that doesn't take away like great seasons, like 2023 for Mizzou or 2013 or 2007 or like, and they were pretty good that year. They were close, but they came up short. It's like, oh, well, but they didn't. So they didn't. They're never going to win a national championship. And that goes true for, let's see, there's like 130 Division I teams. That's true for probably 110 of them. Like just rolling off the top of my head, like who realistically in the new age of college football can expect to compete for national championships? Like if you just go by conference, ACC, Clemson, Miami, Florida State. Those three teams can win a national championship. They have the funding, they have the fan base, they have the money. In the SEC, Texas, OU, Texas A&M. I'm not saying they will, but like Texas A&M does have the money. Florida, Alabama, Georgia, obviously, Tennessee. Like Ole Miss is like on that cusp. I'm going to say no on Ole Miss, but like they're on that cusp. Auburn, they spend a lot of money and they have one. Like I'll put Auburn on there, but I'm not confident in that. So that's what, 11 teams now. Nobody in the Big 12 can win a national championship. In the Big 10, Ohio State, obviously. Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, USC. Like, I think if USC hires the right guy, they can do it. Washington. Washington should probably be on that list. So that's 17 teams. And I'm sure I'm forgetting about somebody. Like, I'm just over. Like, let me try to go through the SEC. Texas A&M, Oklahoma. Oh, LSU. I forgot LSU. So that's – knock it off. That's 18. I apologies to LSU fans. I'm sure if there are any LSU fans watching, you were like sitting there about shaking your computer screen. I, of course, forgot about LSU. They're in an interesting spot this year. Plenty of time to talk about them as time goes on. But yeah, like if you're not on that list, and there's some really good programs on that list, like Wisconsin's been a really good program. Nebraska has been a great program, obviously. I mean, we're thinking about some new, like Louisville, Iowa, Missouri. Like, there's teams in that list that have been, Arkansas has like been good at times, like that have proud programs, and you're just not going to win a national title. Because if Mizzou made the playoff last year, let's say they got like the 10 seed, they would have to go play Notre Dame on the road. Oh, Notre Dame can win it too, so there's 18 teams. But like you have to go play Notre Dame on the road, and then if you won that, you got to play Georgia on a neutral. Like, it's just not going to happen unless things change. Now, here's what I will say. When I was younger, I'm only 28. Like, I'm not old. It never felt like Clemson was going to be a national power. And yet here they are. Like, there they were, for a short brief of time. Now, what's it going to take for a program like Mizzou or any of these schools to become national powers is you got to either get a crap ton of money, or you got to catch a little bit of a break schedule, because like the ACC when Clemson was dominant, Virginia Tech had fallen off a cliff. Florida State was good, but they were not like 2013 Florida State, and then like they fell off after Jameis left, and then that's when like Deshaun and Clemson took over. But like Miami stunk. Miami still really can't figure it out. If they had an average defense last year, they're a national title contender. But it's just it's tough, man. Like, so what I'm saying is like you got to find a ton of funding, or you need to find like the best QB ever, and you need to have a top 5 pick at quarterback. Maybe Matt Zollers is that guy. Like, I don't know. But it's going to take something like that for you to like way punch above your pay grade to insert yourself into the national championship contender picture. It can happen. Like we saw with Clemson. It can happen. It's just not likely. Now, that doesn't take away my love of Mizzou football. Like, I'm a Phoenix Suns fan. Like, they're never going to win a title. Like, they've had a couple chances. It's just never going to happen. In professional sports, it's a little different. But the Blues won a title. I'm a St. Louis Blues fan. God bless them. They won a title. But it's just not probably ever going to happen. Now, that doesn't mean you can't enjoy things. Because college football, despite what ESPN and Fox have tried their damnedest to do, and they've succeeded in a lot of ways, this sport is not about the national championship. And I've gone on this rant a few times. It is not all about the national championship. It is about making memories that will last you a lifetime. I'm a dork. I remember Mizzou OU in 2007, like, because it sucked. But you know what most Mizzou fans do remember is that game against Kansas. That will memory made forever. Or that the 13-year team against Texas A&M or Georgia, whichever game. The 23 team, everyone will remember the kick against Florida. No one will remember a few years from now the LSU loss. They'll just remember beating the crap out of Tennessee at home and the stand-on business stuff. College sports is about making memories for your favorite team that'll last. Now, basketball is different. And we'll talk about basketball because really we're just digging into the whole athletic department. Again, Missouri baseball doesn't matter. Like, they don't care. And same with women's basketball. They just do not care about the sport. Maybe that'll change. The women's basketball team's hiring a new coach. There is a prime, really good coach from Missouri that is available that apparently they're not even going to try and go get. So, is what it is. But basketball-wise, like, you're not going to spend with Kentucky. You just aren't. You're probably not going to spend with Arkansas now that the Tyson Nugget people have been like, oh, we need to spend money on basketball. Outside of that, and Arkansas, like, Cal is a good coach, but Arkansas, like, Cal underachieves. Not to the extent they did this year. And good on them for getting to, like, the tournament, like the back half of their season, back half of the SEC play. They were awesome. But outside of that, like, it's just going to come down to, like, basketball wise, player acquisition. Do you find the right guys? Like Florida found the right guys, and Todd Golden's a really good coach. And some breaks. Like, basketball's so weird. Basketball's such a weird sport. Like, Mizzou can win a natty in basketball. I firmly believe that. Like, we saw San Diego State make a championship game. If you're a college basketball fan and your team's in the tournament, as long as you're not like a 14 or like a 13, like if you're not below like maybe the 12 line, you can make the national. Now, there's metrics we know for like how good you have to be to win the national championship. But you can make the national title game. Like, we saw a pretty mid North Carolina team make the natty. We saw San Diego State make the natty. In back-to-back years, we saw Florida Atlantic make the Final Four. Basketball, really, you have no ceiling outside of and Mizzou does not have a ceiling as a program. They've invested. I think Dennis is a good coach. They recruit at a really high level. They've done a good job outside of last year. And last year, I think they did a good job. It's just they had injuries. I'm not going to go on a basketball rant here, but and then breaks in the tournament. It's the tournament's all about matchups. It's not football, where in football 9 out of 10 times, like if you're just better, you're going to win. There are exceptions, obviously. I think Georgia's a better roster than Notre Dame was last year, but Georgia had injuries, and Notre Dame took advantage. Someone had to take advantage in that half of the bracket. Like, even when they were cutting it close against Ohio State, I never thought Notre Dame could win the national championship. But someone had to take advantage of that part of the bracket because Georgia was playing a backup quarterback, and they did. Penn State couldn't do it, and so good on them. So some of that stuff is matchup stuff, but like more often than not, if you're just better, especially in a situation like that where both teams are you've prepped as hard as you can, you're entirely focused. Upsets do happen in college football. Rarely in situations like that. National championship games, playoff games. Like, have we ever really had a huge playoff upset? TCU over Michigan's like the one I can think of, and TCU had like 2 pick sixes and a bunch of calls go their way to win that game. They earned the game, and that it's TCU fans will obviously remember what Georgia did to them. Like, everyone will remember what Georgia did to them, but TCU fans are going to remember that game for over Michigan. Like, that's what I'm talking about, like memories. But with this new playoff, you're just not going to see that as much. SMU, but basketball, like, it's just going to depend on matchups when you get to the tournament. And Mizzou can win a national championship, not this year, but they can make the national championship game. There's no ceiling on that. So, basketball-wise, I think Mizzou's in as good a shape as any team in the SEC, not named Kentucky or Arkansas. Including, I'm including programs that have become really, really good. Like, Tennessee under Rick Barnes is really damn good. We'll see what Texas and OU do moving forward. Texas A&M's in a funky spot with Buzz Williams. But like, as far as men's basketball goes, I think Mizzou's in as good a spot as anybody not named Arkansas and Kentucky. And that's those two teams. Kentucky might be the best program in college basketball history, have an insane fan base and all the money in the world. And so does Arkansas's got a great fan base too. And they got the Tyson chicken nugget money. So but I think outside of that, you're in as good a spot as any for those types of programs. Like, Auburn spends, obviously, but like, it's all going to depend on what some of these schools do for coaches. Alabama's obviously crazy good right now. Mizzou did beat Alabama. And yeah, so like Mizzou, I think their standing in the SEC is you're always going to have to punch above their pay grade. You just have to. It's the unfortunate reality of the situation, but they have, and I think they continue to will. I'm really excited for this football season. I'm excited to kind of get talking about it. So we will be back next week for Missouri Live. Episode 16, we'll get more into the football team. We'll talk a little bit more. I'm happy to be back. I've had some thoughts I just kind of wanted to get out and spew out for this first show back after a couple of weeks where everything went to crap, and it was not fun for me. So thank you guys all for tuning in. MIZZOU. Enjoy the tournament. If you are doing anything for St. Patrick's Day tonight, be safe. Don't put others at risk. Don't be stupid. And I will see you all next week.